Hello everyone, this is David, and tonight's film that we watched is the movie Chud. Now, Chud is an interesting film for a couple of reasons. First of all, um, it's got this really strange cult following to it. It's by no means a great movie. In fact, in terms of monster action, it really didn't have much at all. But it is a very 80s film. I kind of lump this one together with Q, as I mentioned in that review, in that the monster isn't in it, and they're in it a lot less in Chud than they are in Q. The monster isn't in it that much, but there's a lot of other plots going on and people doing things that are tangentially related. So let's talk about the Chuds for a moment. Now, the Chuds are your basic Morlock kind of creature, and for those who do not know what a Morlock is, we'll give you a quick definition. A Morlock is any sort of subterranean human mutation or variant that feeds on humans. Now that this isn't an official definition, but this is the way I kind of define it, and I know a lot of other people that use that term too. It comes from, I believe, the Time Machine, the book by, I believe it was Jules Verne, but I may be mistaken. I don't remember who exactly did the Time Machine. I think it was Jules Verne though. But anyway, so they come from that, and these very much are Morlocks. They are mutated humans due to toxic waste. They don't really have powers other than they have sharp claws. They're strong. Although one of the Chuds does get his head chopped off at one point, and the body keeps going. And also, they don't have red blood; they have green blood, so they're pretty mutated. It's kind of nebulous exactly how they mutated. I mean, obviously exposure to the toxic waste, and you do see someone kind of half mutated, but did they eat it, or is it just casual exposure? They never really go into the biology of the Chud, and it really isn't all that necessary. But it is an interesting note that we don't really get to learn much about the monsters that the movie is mostly named after. But wait, maybe it's not. Because this film got like major rewrites, and one of the alternate names for Chud. So Chud nominally stands for cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dweller. Okay, fair enough. Or does it stand for contamination hazard, underground disposal? I don't know, but apparently it's both of those things, because we do in fact have cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers, but also we have the government disposing of toxic waste in New York. That is the basic crux of the problem here. Basically, they're disposing of toxic waste under New York. Now, here's a quick question. Before I get into this movie, why would you ever do that? Why would the government ever think taking one of the most densely populated cities in America and putting toxic waste under it would be a good idea? Like, I understand there wouldn't be a movie otherwise, but you got to make at least nominal sense, and that doesn't make much sense to me. It's just like, oh, look, we needed a movie. Let's throw toxic waste under a city. And it's not like it's a company doing it. It's very much the government's doing it. And I don't know why the government would. Like, if this was happening in some no-name town in the middle of nowhere where they had an abandoned mine and they're filling the mine with toxic waste, and I'm pretty sure there's other movies like that stuff like that has happened, although I can't name anything off the top of my head. That I could see the government doing, but like here, you're taking the most like populated city on, at least on the East Coast. I mean, I know Las Vegas, or not Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and that whole area is pretty densely populated. But that being said, why would you do that? I don't know. There are no answers. I'm guessing like Captain Planet villains just took over the government for a couple weeks and just decided, fuck it, we're gonna hide toxic waste under New York City for some reason. It seemed like a good idea at the time. That's what we're doing. So let's get into this movie, because this kind of goes all over the place now that we've gotten that rant out of the way. So the movie opens up, a woman walking her dog, and a manhole cover kind of pushes itself open, and a hand comes out of a creature, and it grabs her and pulls her in. Or grabs her dog and then pulls her in with the dog or something like that. Something to that along the line. Turns out that, I believe, is the one of the main characters' wives, the police chief, I believe. So meanwhile, photographer and his girlfriend are doing some photography stuff, and he's getting in trouble for, not being late with like photographs and whatnot. He was working on photographing the homeless underneath New York City. And for those of you who don't know or aren't aware, New York City has an entire, it's almost like a society, but it's not, of homeless people that live underground. And it's like this whole huge thing because there's a lot of abandoned stuff under New York. I mean, the city's been there for, a very long time. It's one of the older settlements in the New World and, New World, Americas. And there's a large homeless population there, like massive. And there's an entire, underground, for lack of a better term, society. And it's kind of crazy. Well, anyway, so this guy's going in to investigate that. And that's in real life. Well, in real life, there's an underground, homeless thing like that, which, if you have a big enough city, kind of makes sense. Anyway, so he's investigating that, and there's been, some strange disappearances and whatnot. Meanwhile, police captain, he's looking into all these disappearances among the homeless. And he talks to this guy who owns a soup kitchen, and because he does, a soup kitchen for, the homeless. And he's trying to get some information out of him, and he does the best he can. There's some crazy people that he talks to because, generally the homeless people are not the most mentally put together individuals. I'm not saying all of them are crazy, but, in general, most of them are given to eccentricities that you or me might not be. And so there's some issues there. Meanwhile, they find some unusual stuff. They go down and they find some radiation sensing equipment, a Geiger counter, some parts to a radiation suit, and whatnot. And meanwhile, the monsters keep attacking. You don't really get to see anything, but they keep attacking and are eating people effectively. And they basically break into the photographer. The photographer goes down and has some photos. And he goes out for the afternoon with his girlfriend, where they talk about the family they're going to have because she's pregnant. And meanwhile, the Reverend, which is the nickname of the guy that has the soup kitchen, and the police chief bust into that guy's house and steal a bunch of his photographs. They take the photographs to this meeting with all these different individuals, including this guy who's working with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, mayor and whatnot. And they basically explain to him that there's chuds living under the city. And they're nah, they don't believe him at first. He goes the Reverend basically decides, well, I'm going to release all this stuff to the public, and you can either deal with me right now, or I can go to the public, I can go to the newspapers with this stuff, and you can deal with it then. Because he just wants to get the problem solved. He doesn't care about how it gets solved, just he wants it solved, and they're not really having any of it. So they send some. So he basically convinces them to send some people down. But after he leaves, they send a guy to rough him up, and they send some guys in to investigate it. And the chuds attack. You don't really get to see it, and they all get killed. And the bureau basically is okay, we're gonna flood the whole system with gas, so we can snuff all of them. Meanwhile, the Reverend got locked in the basement. This other guy, this reporter, convinced the photographer to go down to the sewers. So they're investigating down the sewers. The reporter gets grabbed by the chuds and killed. The photographer's going around. He eventually ends up meeting up with the Reverend, and they team up. They find the home of the chuds. There's a bunch of them there. and all the radiation and stuff. They find a guy partially chudified, which is a term from actually Chud 2, Bud the Chud, but they find a guy partially chudified, and they have to kill him. Meanwhile, the Chuds start coming up from the sewers, and one gets into the reporter's apartment, attacks his girlfriend. She gets a sword. I don't know why he had a sword, but he has a sword. Chops off its head. It dies. The Chuds really aren't all that difficult to kill, although apparently they are, because they killed all of the people armed with flamethrowers and automatic weapons. But a pregnant woman with the sword can just chop one's head off, no problem. Don't know why they're inconsistent in their ability to be killed. They come up, they attack like a diner, kill everyone in the diner. You don't get to see it though. You really don't get to see much in the way of attacks. It's kind of sad. And at the end of the day, the photographer and the Reverend are trapped in the sewers. They move a truck out of the way that was blocking the manhole cover. They come out. The nuclear regulatory guy shoots the police captain. The police captain takes him down after he's about to kill some other people. And the movie basically ends on that note. It's an okay one. This is an okay cult classic. If you're in it for the monsters, you're going to be disappointed. They really aren't in this movie all that much. Again, kind of like Q, but less so. Because at least you got to see Q every couple minutes killing somebody. The Chuds go long periods of time without killing anybody, and all of their attacks are literally cutaways. I haven't seen the director's cut, or at least I don't think I have, so I don't know if that's any better. So do with that what you will. That being said, this is a kind of a classic, cult classic, if you will, movie. So I recommend, if you're kind of an 80s completionist in terms of 80s horror, check this one out. Otherwise, go with whatever suits you at the time. It's middle of the road in terms of appeal. It's more stuff going on with the human characters than with the monsters. So if you're fine with that, this will be a fine movie. If you're not fine with that, you probably won't like it. So there you go. Hey folks, good night.